Hello and welcome back to another episode of PS4 Horror Spotlight. This week we're looking at PT. PT was released in 2014 on the PlayStation Network and only on the PlayStation Network as a free game. Upon completing the game, players were treated to one of the biggest and most smartly marketed reveals ever. That PT was an abbreviation for playable teaser, and said teaser was for none other than the next Silent Hill release. A new Silent Hill isn't a big deal on its own, since the series hadn't been a critical darling for about a decade at the time, so the even bigger reveal was that the game was to be directed and produced by Hideo Kojima, the raving madman responsible for the Metal Gear series, and Guillermo del Toro, the acclaimed film director behind Pan's Labyrinth and Pacific Rim. The game hid this aspect well, disguising itself as an indie project developed by the fictional developer 7780 Studio, and Kojima predicted that it would take an entire week before anyone would solve the game's final puzzle and subsequently break the internet. It only took one day, but excitement was nonetheless in the air, and the full version of Silent Hills became the most hotly anticipated title in development. For what is essentially a 20-minute demo, there's a lot to talk about. The gameplay is as simple as it gets. You use the left stick to walk, the right stick to look around, and if you click the right stick in, you can zoom for a closer look. That's all the control you have. There's no action button, no run button, no crouch, no jump, nothing else. For one specific puzzle, you have to press X, but this occurs in a fourth wall break and is specific only to that one point of context. Everything else is accomplished simply by looking at hotspots in the environment. The very concept is ingenious, forcing you to stare terror in the face to proceed. There aren't any actual failure states, but the game is nonetheless terrifying as it oozes with an increasingly threatening atmosphere. It all takes place in a single L-shaped corridor, and each time you pass through the basement door at the end, you wind up right back at the beginning of the hallway. Each time you loop back, the area is a little bit different. The first loop plays a radio message about a man who murdered his pregnant wife and two young children. The second few loops taunt you with pounding at the bathroom door. The pounding grows more aggressive on the third loop, and on the fourth loop, the bathroom door opens just enough to peek inside. Cockroaches spill out into the hallway from the door, and the sounds of a crying baby can be heard. Peeking inside triggers a one-eyed female ghost to pop up and close the door, in one of the most unnerving, spine-chilling, and understated jump scares I've ever experienced. The sound design here is minimal, with the baby crying, the dissonant hum of the score, and the door creaking and shutting being drowned out by my own gasps of terror. And when the door shuts, there is nothing else. You're left staring at the closed bathroom door, trying to muster the nerve to keep going. 2 loops later, and the bathroom door swings wide open, beckoning you to go inside. PT relies much more heavily on persistent atmospheric fear than jump scares. There are about 3 scripted jump scares that are all brilliantly planned around knocking the player out of the chair at the very height of tension, but other events occur randomly, such as Lisa, the one-eyed pregnant ghost roaming the hallway, appearing outside the windows and showing up in the reflection of the mirror. Most of the scripted events of the game are either bizarre or simply uncomfortable, such as the screaming baby and the swinging refrigerator, but this inevitably puts the player in a state of heightened intensity, making it seem like anything can happen at any time and it will all be terrible and unexpected even when you think you're ready for it. Despite largely being a ghost train with a few odd visual puzzles to solve and mostly scripted, non-threatening events, PT is a masterclass in horror design, all wrapped up in a neat little package that lasts only 20 minutes if you know what you're doing. The game's final puzzle is a point of controversy because it is so difficult to solve, even knowing the solution, because no actual logic is involved in solving it. For the purpose of a teaser, the puzzle serves its purpose just fine. Now that Silent Hills is cancelled with no chance of ever being revived, PT is technically a standalone game, so that final puzzle is now just a royal pain in the ass. It would have been nice to have the option of starting a new game. Instead, if you want to play PT without solving that hideous puzzle, you have to go into your save data utility and delete PT from there, a process that always makes me nervous because it looks so similar to the process of deleting the actual game from my hard drive. This leads to the bulk of what I want to discuss. PT is no longer available for download on the PlayStation Store. As a PlayStation exclusive, that means you can no longer get it anywhere. As quite possibly the most interesting piece of marketing material in video game history, as well as a damn fine horror game in its own right, this is a travesty on the level of book burning. There's been plenty of coverage on the schism between Konami and Hideo Kojima, and only those two entities know the full story of why the two can no longer work together, but PT is nonetheless a piece of art that was given to society and then subsequently taken back to be shelved by Konami like a gold-hoarding dragon. This is a problem that can only occur because of digital exclusivity and console exclusivity. If PT were available on PC, Konami would not have been able to stop the flood of piracy that would have inevitably occurred as a result of their selfishness toward their product. But as a PS4 exclusive, it hasn't been possible to pirate the game thus far. The closest thing we have is a near-perfect recreation of the L-shaped corridor in a design demo aptly titled Punity. Since the digital age of video games began, publishers have pushed for more and more control of how their games are played, mostly to counteract piracy, but more so to the detriment of cash-paying consumers. The implementation of digital rights management, or DRM, has caused countless games to launch in unplayable states and later become unplayable a few years down the line, but Konami's retraction of PT's availability is undoubtedly the most egregious crime against a piece of art that now belongs to society that I've ever seen. There's no doubt that Konami is aware that PT's very existence makes the company look bad, since it's a teaser for a game they pulled the plug on as a result of a massive rift with a beloved game developer with enough notoriety to make him practically a household name, so it's understandable as to why Konami would want PT erased from existence. However, the more tactful approach would have been to re-upload PT to the PlayStation Store with the final cutscene removed. This would have allowed Konami to save a little face with its public relations while removing any mention of Silent Hills and Hideo Kojima from their beloved game. In fact, the game's story makes more sense without the cutscene. The game hints throughout that you are the father that murdered his family, now living out his own personal hell being stalked by the ghost of Lisa, but the end cutscene shows that the player character has the likeness of actor Norman Reedus, while the wedding photo of Lisa and her husband shows a mustachioed man that looks nothing like Reedus. Again, this would never have been a point of contention if PT didn't wind up becoming a standalone instead of a teaser. Pulling the game altogether began a PR nightmare for Konami, and many people now consider them the most deplorable game publisher by a wide margin. Following their misguided deletion of PT, Konami has dug themselves deeper and deeper into their own grave with their most devoted fans. Silent Hill and Metal Gear are now being marketed as pachinko machine franchises. Metal Gear is getting a 4-player co-op zombie shooter, and Castlevania is now an eroticized laughingstock. Perhaps one day there will be a change in management at Konami, or more likely another company will buy Konami out. And hopefully this change will mean our favorite franchises will be treated with respect, and maybe we'll even get a re-release of PT. For now, I urge anyone that can to create a pirated version of PT that can be played on the PC. Not an advocate for piracy, but in this case I make a huge exception. Nobody is making money off of PT, and the world deserves to have it. Once art is given to society, no greedy publisher should have the right to take it away from us. This has been the Panic Reroll with another episode of PS4 Horror Spotlight, a series dedicated to console devotees wondering whether or not a given horror game is worth the asking price, in this case, piracy. Thanks for watching.